Good afternoon. I'm Russell Wooldridge, Director of Business Development for DRI International, and I'm pleased to welcome you to the latest in our ongoing series of webinars. With these presentations, our goal is to advance not just the knowledge and understanding of our certifications and training programs, but to provide thought leadership for the industry as a whole. Today's webinar is called Why Words Matter, DRI International's Glossary for Resiliency Unveiled, Survey Results Revealed. We'll cover the following: the glossary's origin and goals, the process of selecting sources, terms, and definitions, and some of the tough choices made along the way, the results of the post-release reader survey, and more. And before I dive into the presentation, I'd like to thank everyone who worked on this glossary, a new language guide designed to improve communications and increase clarity across the business continuity community. It addresses a long-standing need in our professional community, helps advance our profession, and brings continuity professionals together in a new and exciting way. DRI is as proud of the finished product as we are of the process of creating it. And after nearly 2 years, DRI can finally present the results of that work, a common set of universal terms that will reduce confusion, remove inconsistencies, and facilitate coordination. 2 weeks ago, the International Glossary for Resiliency was made available through My DRI, where it can be downloaded as a PDF file. If you haven't done so already, download it right after today's webinar. You do not need to be a DRI certified professional to create a free My DRI profile. Our glossary is available to everyone. Now, on to the main event. During today's session, we will be hearing from a number of subject matter experts. Our speakers include DRI International Managing Director of Global Operations, Chloe Demrovsky, Director of IT Continuity and Risk Management for Fidelity Investment, and Chair of the DRI International Glossary Committee, Bobby Williams, Mission Assurance Continuity Specialist for the Department of Defense and DRI Board Member, John Franchi, DRI's Director of Education, Gary Villeneuve, and our Director of Communications, Buffy Rojas. I'm sure you already have many questions in mind for our speakers, and we welcome all of them. Please use the question box at the bottom of your control panel on the right-hand side of your screen in most cases. Simply type in your question at any time during the presentation, and we will answer as many of them as possible during the Q&A portion of this webinar. Now, let's hear from our panel of experts. First up is Ms. Chloe Demrovsky. Chloe is the Managing Director of Global Operations at DRI International, Board Director at the DRI Foundation, and a DRI CBCV. She is responsible for designing DRI International's market development strategy and is managing its global network that conducts courses in over 50 countries on 6 continents. Chloe is the coordinator of the International Glossary for Resiliency, as well as the DRI International editor for Thrive International Magazine and Thrive Iberoamerica blog, DRI's premier publication of original content in the Spanish language. She's also an adjunct professor at New York University. So, Chloe, please share with us how and why this glossary came to be. I'd also ask you to touch on why DRI International is the logical source for this type of thought leadership.
I'm honored to participate in this webinar, Russell, and to be spearheading this important project. It's been quite a journey. In my role running the international operation at DRI, I interact with certified professionals and the greater community all over the world. As you can imagine, I encounter communication issues of all kinds. Sometimes it's a pure language barrier, but often problems arise from a lack of standard industry terminology. Even when we are speaking the same language, we can still have these issues, sometimes without even realizing it. Clear communication is an essential part of what we do, yet we've all had experiences in which the same terms are used to describe different situations. The example I like to use is, what do you call a fire? Is it simply a fire, or is it an incident, a disaster, an emergency, an event, all of the above? In a conference room, these misunderstandings can be funny. In a crisis situation, they can be dangerous. And you know, people come to us all the time looking for solutions. We get questions about terminology constantly. I was at our annual DRI conference in Malaysia, and spiritual risk was a hot topic of conversation, but I don't encounter that particular term anywhere else, even though it could have its uses. And I received a question from an instructor in Thailand asking whether we use the term assembly point or muster point in the workplace. In helping people to answer these kinds of questions again and again, I arrived at the conclusion that, as a profession, we just are not defining ourselves comprehensively. DRI International is well known as a global leader in education and certification for business continuity and related industries. We teach in over 50 countries, we have certified professionals in over 100 countries, no small feat for an organization of our size. This keeps us busy, as you can imagine, but our obligation extends beyond that. We're an ANSI certified standards development organization. We have an obligation to provide thought leadership for our community. And as a nonprofit organization, service is our mission. Our certified professionals and the greater continuity community look to us for guidance. So, when we were asked to offer a DRI glossary to complement our 10 professional practices and other resources, we wanted to make sure that our contribution would be legitimately useful to the community. The first question we posed was simple. What can we create to best serve the industry? Well, the industry already has many glossaries and a plethora of terms that it's currently using. Some of these documents carry regulatory weight, others are standards, and yet others are widely used documents from professional associations. But really, there are vast discrepancies between them. So rather than add to the noise, I felt that DRI should act as an arbiter, if you will, of existing definitions. For this reason, the DRI glossary does not offer any new definitions. And I repeat, no new definitions. Instead, we came up with a process to select and present to you the best-in-class definitions already in use in the English language. We had some other considerations as well. The process had to be international, inclusive, and apolitical in order to accurately represent our base of certified professionals, 40% of whom reside outside of the United States, and that percentage is growing all the time. That's why we cast the net wide enough to include source documents from all over, and we will continue to internationalize this process by establishing subcommittees to maintain versions in other languages. We hope to eventually provide standardization not only in English, but also across languages. Now, that topic is large enough to be the subject of another webinar, but if you are interested in volunteering with language subcommittees, please do reach out to me. For this incarnation, we established a volunteer committee of industry leaders to review and vote on the terms and definitions that would ultimately appear in the document. So what you see here is the result of nearly 2 years of effort to build the beginnings of a standard set of terms. Our chair, Bobby Williams, brought his wealth of technical expertise when he created the methods for us to organize this vast amount of information into a comprehensible format. And then he designed a 3-part process for arriving at this publishable first version. I have learned a great deal from him throughout this process, and I am just thrilled that he will be continuing on as chair. I know that I didn't have any idea just how involved this process would be when I committed to it, and I'm sure he didn't either. That said, we expect this to be just the starting point. We expect that this will be a living document, subject to revisions and changes. We're eager for your input, as well as the participation of representatives from each of the source documents, as we work to achieve our goal of uniformity in the industry. I'm excited that this moment has finally arrived. This project was conceived in June 2012, and now here we are, nearly 2 years later, with a public version. This webinar would not be complete without a quick moment of gratitude for those who helped us get here. I'd like to take a moment to thank all of our permanent committee members, Bobby Williams, Al Berman, Drew Buchanan, John Franchi, Dean Gallup, James Price, Gary Villeneuve, Mark Wilson, and Brian Zawada, as well as our contributing members, Carol Chia, Rod Crowder, Mohammed Al-Janebi, Jason Lowe, Zainal Abidin Marif, Winston Poon, Harley Lemons, and Kelly Okolita. Lastly, a special thanks to our assistant coordinators, Ingrid Kovaci, Andrew Frame, and Scott Reuter from New York University, and to Harvey Batan, Buffy Rojas, Melissa Smith, Candy Wehenkel, Catherine Wilkins, and Russell Wooldridge. Volunteers are an integral part of what we do here at DRI, and there are lots of unique opportunities available. For more information about getting involved on the Glossary Committee or with one of our other groups, please visit the Volunteer Opportunities page of our website. So I'll be back in a bit to discuss the results of the survey with some initial feedback about the project.
Thanks, Chloe. I'm going to turn things over to Bobby Williams now, but I'll be back to talk to you some more about the results of the Glossary survey. I'm pleased to introduce Bobby Williams. He's the Director of IT Continuity and Risk Management for Fidelity Investments. He earned his MBCP from DRI, and he also holds an MBCI from the BCI. Bobby chairs the DRI International Glossary Committee. He also serves on the NFPA 1600 Emergency Management and Business Continuity Committee. Bobby has worked in the IT industry for 25 years in technical roles, vendor education, post sales engineering, disaster recovery management, and business continuity management. Bobby retired from the Tennessee Army National Guard, where he served as an artillery officer in the 196th Field Artillery Brigade. Bobby, please tell us about the process of building this glossary and the tough choices that were made along the way.
Thank you, Russell. It is indeed my privilege to be a part of the webinar and this project. I got involved with the glossary after seeing an email from DRI asking about interest in participating with establishing the project. I'd worked on the Glossary Committee for another organization, and I was interested in seeing what the DRI was proposing to do differently. During the initial meeting, I volunteered to lead the effort after Al Berman twisted my arm. It's been a very rewarding journey for me since that meeting. Chloe mentioned that a lot of MBCPs responded to help on the project, and that's been really a joy for me. Just learning from the experience and wisdom from the group has been a great benefit to me personally and professionally. And of course, witnessing firsthand Chloe's facilitation and diplomacy skills will be something that I will be able to use for the rest of my career. I had a personal interest in business continuity terminology and a common glossary from an experience many years ago. It involved a meeting with some IT executives and managers at a company I worked for previously about the company's DR program. I worked for a director of IT that had lived through the data center disaster during the Chicago River rupture and the flooding in the spring of 1992. As a mentor to me, he passed on lessons that he learned from that incident. He also taught me how to prepare presentations and to ask questions and present data that led the audience to the conclusion that we were trying to present. During the meeting, I was discussing the RTO on some applications and the lack of the assessment time in the recovery. When I said that RTO was measured from the time of the incident, one VP stood up and said, "That isn't the way we do it, and that would make us look stupid." He then stated, "Hey, the tables and chairs aren't arranged correctly for the next meeting," and started rearranging the furniture. Well, stupid is as stupid does, and I started a personal quest to see where is the official definition of RTO. 6 years later, I hope that we can tell the world DRI has found that source of truth, and the source of truth is this glossary. The business continuity, disaster recovery, and emergency management communities will finally be able to look in one place and see a solid, world-class definition and the source of that definition to cite as a reference. One thing that our committee has established is that we do not create glossary terms. We are collecting the terms from laws, industry standards like NFPA, ISO, and as-is, published industry sources of terminology, membership bodies with best practice guides, and government guidelines. We started the project with 23 source documents. We asked for input from DRI instructors and DRI collaborators from around the world. If we had not asked the community for that input, we would have missed some great information used by the professionals in the Pacific Rim and in Europe. This really has been and will continue to be a worldwide project. The first iteration had 23 sources. We documented 2,730 occurrences of 2,189 unique terms. We obviously had to start focusing on terms that were business continuity, disaster recovery, and emergency management specific. We also contemplated and included some risk management guidance and decided that it would be important to include the risk management fundamental terms because they could be confused if we didn't include them. That first reduction was accomplished by a voting process, which was not a simple vote. And this was one place where Chloe excelled at diplomacy. So many ideas and opinions, yet not much time. And that was in the fall of 2012. Over time, we got the list of terms whittled down to 332 unique terms that occurred 707 times in 22 references. Then the hard tasks started. Since 332 unique terms occurred 707 times, there seemed to be multiple definitions of the same term. This turned out to be the most surprising fact to me personally. How can so many definitions exist for the same term? We had to vote, negotiate, and compromise. Then we rolled up our sleeves, not in the combative way, and got to work. We had phone bridges, email chains, person-to-person calls, and public input from the 2013 conference attendees. Through all of this, we decided on our best in industry definitions of the terms. Business impact analysis was the most contentious term that we had. However, we had others terms that had a large number of different definitions. Business impact analysis had 16. Business continuity plan had 12. Risk assessment had 12. Risk management had 12. Risk had 11. Recovery time objective had 10. Business continuity management 9. Incident 8. Resilience 8. And crisis management 7. Fortunately, some reference documents actually use and cite some other documents. This made it a little easier on some of the terms. The DRJ cites some BCI terms, and the BCI cites terms from other standards. Through all this effort, we became aware that there are definitions that we don't think are the optimal definition. However, the scope of our committee was to find the best existing definition for the terms that we felt were foundational. We will be working to include the members of the sources in our efforts to establish one glossary that the entire community can use. In working toward that goal, we're establishing subcommittees to reach out to the sources and invite them to work with us and to let us know when updates to their documents are released. It's very important to keep up with the changes, and that is also a very daunting effort. We're also establishing methods for feedback to the glossary. DRI annual conference is going to be a fundamental part of that process. We want to create discussion sessions, breakouts at the conference for input, gripes, and comments for the professionals that need to use the glossary in their plans. I hope that our questions during this webinar develop some other ideas for the committee to carry forward. I also hope that we can get some more people willing to help provide published laws, regulations, standards, industry best practice documents that contain terms and definitions. I want to personally thank DRI for allowing me to be part of this project and for challenging me professionally to lead the effort. I hope that this will stand the test of time as a foundational part of our profession. I have a great committee, and we're focused on our profession and our industry. Thank you, and I look forward to continuing to be able to serve our profession.
Thank you, Bobby. Our next speaker is Mr. John Franchi. John is a mission assurance continuity specialist for the Department of Defense, where he coordinates and synchronizes continuity and crisis management policies and procedures across the U.S. intelligence community. Prior to joining DoD, John served as the Chief of Continuity and Emergency Management at the FBI. A decorated Army veteran, he held a wide variety of command and staff assignments in the United States, Germany, Korea, and Saudi Arabia. In addition to being a DRI certified professional, John is a member of the DRI Board of Directors, serves on both the DRI Professional Development Committee and the Glossary Committee, and is recognized by the Federal Emergency Management Agency as a professional continuity practitioner. John, tell us how you came to be involved in the Glossary Project and about the specific terminology needs of the public sector as it evolves from continuity of government programs to business continuity and emergency management.
Thanks, Russell. I became involved in the Glossary Project because I was interested in getting the public sector continuity advanced to the private sector level. I was invited by Chloe and yourself to assist in that project, and I thought it would be important to make sure that the public sector equities were addressed in the comprehensive glossary. And I was honored to be asked and working on the project. Again, it went back to the terminology needs of the public sector. As you know, in the public sector, especially in the federal continuity business, it has evolved from what we used to call the continuity of government programs, where we were worried about the worldwide nuclear war and how to protect our leadership and ensure our communications, to what we call more of the business continuity today. It's also evolved, as you know, from the IT side into more of the emergency management. So the federal continuity, along with state, local, tribal, are converging into more of an emergency management framework. And as you may know, the OPM, Office of Personnel Management, now has a new job series, the 0089 Emergency Management Series, that has continuity listed under it. I had an opportunity to speak at CPM West and GovSec this past November on the challenges of putting together a private sector continuity program. And again, it's about developing and professionalizing our staffs. The gist of my presentation was on storming, norming, and performing. One of the most important things was the norming of federal continuity professionals. We do not come up through the ranks, so to speak. We come from various divergent backgrounds. Many of my continuity peers come from the security job series, the general administrative job series, and the program management job series. So again, various backgrounds that we have to norm into the government continuity programs. So one of the most important things in the norming process is to make sure that our terminology is correct. Mean what you say what you mean. So it's an important aspect. And again, this glossary is an important part of getting the federal workforce, along with our state, tribal, and local counterparts together, so we have a common lexicon. One of the stories that I like to tell about the needs of common terminology dealt with one of the courses that I had for incident management. It's called Charge the Line. So we had a big natural disaster. Fires are all over the place. Power is out. A few people are protesting because they can't get their basic needs met. So we have the firefighters fighting the fire. We have the electricians and the public utility staff working on restoring electricity. And we have our National Guard guarding our streets, along with our local law enforcement. And then over the radio system comes the command, charge the line. And again, what does that mean? Well, for the firefighters, that means they put water through the hose. The electricians turn the power back on, and the National Guard guys fixed bayonets and started to advance. So again, you can see some of the confusion if you don't have a common vocabulary, a common lexicon. So again, this glossary is very important to continuity professionals, both in the public sector and the private sector. DRI really hit it out of the park in identifying the need for a best-in-class glossary. There are many variances in public and private sector continuity literature. We have ISO standards and other authoritative references that really didn't have norm language. And DRI, through this comprehensive glossary process, looked at the best practices out there and pulled together the common definitions to really assist business continuity professionals, not only to talk to each other, but also talk to the customers they serve. As you know, one of the attributes of a profession is that it has a unique body of knowledge, and DRI has the professional practices which encompass our unique body of knowledge. But one of the other things that it has, it's its own lexicon, and this glossary project really serves to document the words that business continuity professionals need to have in order to make sure that our profession continues now and in the future. I was truly impressed by the work both Bobby Williams and Chloe Demrovsky did to form the team and get such a complicated task put together and create such a valuable resource for business continuity professionals. Not only did they put together a great team, but also the research that was involved to make sure that we had the authoritative sources necessary to get a truly comprehensive document. They went through ISO standards, international standards, authoritative references, public and private sector documentation to pull together all the terms used by business continuity professionals basically throughout the world. They managed the team to put these things together, review them, find areas where some of the terms conflicted, and adjudicated those. It was over a year process, and I think the end result of this is going to be a great resource for business continuity professionals, both in the United States, public and private sector, and our professional counterparts throughout the world.
Thank you, John, for being part of the project and also for the excellent analysis of the challenges of the public sector continuity professionals and how the glossary can support them. Mean what you say and say what you mean is certainly a rule to live by. And now I'd like to introduce Gary Villeneuve. Gary is DRI's Director of Education and holds MBCP, CPSCP, and CBCLA certifications with over 30 years of experience in business continuity, disaster recovery, emergency management, and information technology. His experience spans both the public and private sectors, and in addition to work at DRI, he has taught as an associate professor at a number of colleges and universities. Gary, tell us how the glossary will impact DRI International's educational offerings.
Thanks, Russell. The International Glossary for Resiliency will replace our current glossary, which was developed in 2007, and will be included as a supplement in our 4-day and 2-day courses in business continuity planning for auditors, business continuity for the healthcare industry, and the master's case study review. In addition to an excellent information resource for preparing for the qualifying exam, it is also a great tool for students to use as a continuity professional. The new glossary will also be included as a supplement in our higher education, public sector, and specialty courses. The International Glossary for Resiliency will have a profound impact on DRI courseware. For instance, within Program Initiation and Management, scope is currently presented as documenting what the business continuity plan will recover and what it will not, but will be changed to the boundary or extent to which a process, procedure, certification, or contract applies, which is consistent with the ITIL definition. The definition of recovery will be consistent with the NFPA 1600 standard. Recovery time objective, or RTO, will be consistent with ACES. Recovery point objective, or RPO, will be consistent with ISO 22301. Business continuity plan with BCI, and so forth. The new glossary will enable DRI to teach more widely accepted concepts of business continuity, disaster recovery, and emergency management. We believe this new glossary is a major plus, and Chloe has done a great job at putting this together.
Thanks, Gary. Our final panelist today is Ms. Buffy Rojas. Buffy is DRI's Director of Communication and has been a part of this industry for some 20 years. She helped launch and was editor-in-chief of both CPM and Continuity Insights, where she had the opportunity to interact with thousands of business continuity professionals through interviews, conferences, and countless articles covering just about every aspect of our industry. Buffy was also the Vice President of Marketing and Communications for Stroll Systems, where she gained an understanding of the vendor community. She is also an award-winning reporter and feature writer at several newspapers. Buffy, please tell us where to find the glossary and where we can come for more information.
Thanks, Russell. As someone who has covered the industry for about 20 years, I'm really excited to finally have a glossary of terms, and I'm thrilled that DRI has taken a leadership role. If you haven't downloaded the glossary document already, it's really easy. Just log into your MyDRI profile and look for it in the revamped resources section. If you don't have a MyDRI account, it's simple to get one. You don't have to be a DRI certified professional, and a MyDRI account is free. Visit drii.org and you'll see a MyDRI link in the upper right-hand corner. The glossary isn't the only thing you'll find in MyDRI. It's also the place where you can download DRI's professional practices, look at job postings, and browse through the presentations from our last 2 conferences and other DRI events. I'd also like to invite you to continue the conversation about the glossary at DRI 2014 in Atlanta, Georgia, where there will be an hour-long working session devoted to the topic on Tuesday, May 20th at 9:15 a.m.
Thank you, Buffy. And now let's go back to Chloe so we can discuss the results of last week's glossary survey. Chloe?
I must say that I'm overwhelmed by the positive response, particularly in response to question 2, which asked the following. Do you see a benefit for having a global resiliency glossary composed of definitions from existing standards, regulations, and publications? Well, 100% of respondents replied that yes, they would find it useful. That's really just amazing. I don't think I've seen a statistic like that in a very long time. Additionally, 89.66% of respondents felt that this approach was more useful than the creation of an entirely new glossary of original definitions, and 87.93% of respondents felt that it would be helpful to their own company or agency's program to reference the DRI glossary as the authoritative source for program definitions. With the responses to these 3 questions, I think it's safe to say that this project is on the right track and will be useful to our target audience. The feedback on the content was interesting as well. 84.48% of respondents felt that the definitions of business continuity, disaster recovery, and emergency management were up to date and accurate. It will be interesting to see whether these definitions change with recent or upcoming releases of new versions of the source documents. We also asked whether or not the public and private sector definitions should be integrated into a single document. While there was some disagreement relative to the rest of the responses, still the majority of respondents, or 77.59%, felt that integration was the better choice. Certainly, John Franchi's story from earlier gave us an illustration about why this might be a good idea. The remainder of the questions were mostly centered around determining how we can best structure the processes and documents moving forward, and we thank you for your input. It will benefit both the volunteer committee and DRI to figure out how we can best serve our community as we continue to lead this project. I'd like to thank everyone who took the time to review the glossary document and to participate in this survey. We will certainly run more of them as needed to assure that this living document remains relevant. Your input is important to us, so we encourage you to keep getting involved. While I have not addressed them directly in this webinar, we have a process in place to review the detailed comments that were added in response to some of the questions. The committee has another challenge ahead to figure out how best to incorporate that feedback. If you would like to add anything else, ask questions, or provide an entirely new set of comments, please do reach out to me. As we have said, the goal of this project is to serve the betterment of the industry, so our objective in running this survey was to determine whether that has been a success. It's pretty exciting that the initial results have confirmed that we are indeed moving in the right direction.
Thanks for that, Chloe. And now let's take a few questions. Yes, Chloe, the first question we've got, there's been a lot of interest into the translation of this document. Is it going to be, is the glossary going to be in languages other than English, which we spoke to, but talk to that process. How is that going to be updated, and how are we going to deal with countries that are separated by a common language, New Zealand, Australia, United States, Canada, the Great Britain, and so on?
Sure, Russell, I can do that. As a director of global operations, I deal with people all over the world all the time, and so it was certainly a big part of the initial thought process for this project that we would not want to just have this available in English, but that we would want it to be available in multiple languages. And then as we went further and thought about how we wanted to create this and pulling from all the different source documents, I felt that it was a better option, instead of just translating the glossary directly, sending it to a professional translator or something, we felt that it would be better to actually have different language subcommittees, people who are experts in business continuity and related fields in that language. We want to pull in any existing regulations and standards and definitions that are currently in use in that language and then integrate them into that version. So the idea is to provide a much more comprehensive document. Selfishly, we translate DRI courses all the time as well, and we can't just send them to professional translators because they don't understand the specific industry terminology. So this kind of document will be incredibly useful for translation projects at DRI, but I'm sure also at other organizations who run into the same problem in that there are no standard translations for different for business continuity terminology in particular. So what we're doing right now is we're setting up the different language committees. I've reached out to some contacts. We've already started a version for Mandarin, and we're starting a Spanish language committee as well to really figure out the best way to do this with full inclusion in every language. And it's funny because we definitely did encounter translation issues within just the English language document. We ended up going with standard American English for the simple reason that that was what was used with most of the source documents that we included. And those that were brought in that were in British English were actually Americanized for this particular glossary for that reason. Did I answer that question, Russell?
I think you did.
Great.
Bobby, here's one for you. Many companies use a source of record for a variety have sources of record for a variety of uses. And how will companies adopt this glossary internally? Can you speak to that point?
Well, yeah, I can, Russell. Actually, this week I was talking to someone that's in the business continuity program for Goodyear Tire and Rubber. And Goodyear is actually, when they downloaded it, they looked at it, and they were excited about it, and they've actually adopted it, and they're using it as a reference for clarity in their risk assessments, their BIA, and their BC planning internally. They're a global company. They can get on a common language based on this. And they've also made it available on their intranet site for all their business continuity planners. And the interesting thing is they're going to use it for their educational program also. And they're looking at using this as a common language between their suppliers. Goodyear is very focused on doing the due diligence with suppliers. And this way, when they say a term, they can show their suppliers where that term is coming from, so they even have a common language in their own supply chain itself. So I think that is my personal goal for what we intended the glossary for. So I was excited to get that kind of feedback, because that's what I hope this is used for globally.
Okay. Well, in the case of a reference document that's used by someone's organization, they use a specific list of terms or some other document. How can that information, if it's not already included in the glossary, how can it be included in the DRI glossary for resilience?
Well, the basis for this glossary is that we're using the standards, laws, and regulations and published resources for terminology. If there's a term that you think, or a user thinks we didn't pick the best possible, well, maybe they can help us with creating by going back to the referenced sources and helping them get that terminology in. As is ISO and NFPA Standards Committee all have a public input process, so its availability is there. DRJ has a glossary committee they can submit through their website, so it's there, and we're using the people doing the work at those cited resources to do the glossary hammering and to get those terms. But the other thing is in your business continuity program, if you don't find a reference or a terminology that's specific to your company, maybe because of geographical or different things, you just in your plan, you can cite the DRI glossary as the source for undocumented definitions in the program, but then you document definitions that you think are better suited for your company. So the process is there, and that's just part of doing good business continuity planning.
Okay. One of the questions that's been asked is, what are the requirements for being on those committees? Chloe, can you handle that question for us?
Well, Russell, let me hit that since Russell, I can answer that question.
Sorry.
Sure, go ahead. The only requirement for sitting on the permanent committee is that the individuals hold a DRI certification. And we have currently the right number of people on the committee, but as needs arise, we will reach out to you. So if you're interested in serving on the committee, we keep a running list of volunteers, and please do reach out to me.
Okay. Let's see. If my company adopts the glossary as an internal standard, how do we ensure that we will always like the definitions involved?
Or Russell, I'll go back to the previous answer in that we want this to be a living document, but we are going to go back and point to those sources of reference. So if there's something that doesn't fit, you either help the business continuity community by proposing and documenting a better definition, but also go into your business continuity program and cite the DRI glossary as a source of record, but also hit any other terms that you would rather be more localized to your program.
Okay. And then we have one final question for Chloe. How often is the glossary going to be updated, and how is that process going to work?
Sure. As we've said multiple times, this glossary document is a living document. That means that we will be making frequent small updates. For example, a not quite so small update, but if the source documents have issued a new release since we started working on this document, we will go through and see if the definitions that we've cited have changed, and then we'll update any definitions that are included in our document. That's an example of the kind of change that we will be making on an ongoing basis. Similarly, if we get a lot of complaints about a particular definition that was chosen by the committee, then we'll take that into account. Perhaps that will be changed. That said, this particular version took us 2 years of work to get to, so we figured that a good release cycle would be every 4 years. The professional practices are also updated every 4 years. The last version came out in 2012 for the professional practices. Now the glossaries come out in 2014. Next professional practice release will be in 2016, and then the DRI glossary release will be in 2018. So every 2 years or so, you'll get a majorly revised document from DRI.
Thank you for a very informative and lively discussion. I think we have provided answers for most of the questions, but if you still have some or need more information that we didn't cover, please give us a call on 866-542-3744. And that concludes today's webinar. You'll find a recording of this webinar posted on our MyDRI reference library at our website, www.drii.org. I want to thank everyone who participated in today's session. It was insightful and illuminating. I'm Russell Wooldridge, and this webinar has been a production of DRI International, 2014, all rights reserved. Thank you for your attention.